Hello, this is Dennis with Walk This Way, and I wanted to continue the series of videos on prayer, and I wanted to help you understand that prayer is not twisting the arm of God. Prayer is not convincing God to change his mind so that we can get the answers that we want. Prayer helps us to grow spiritually. It develops those character traits of faith, which is trust, patience, endurance, persistence. These are the strong virtues of spirituality. But prayer is not so much for ourselves, but prayer is for others. When we're praying for others, we're giving permission for God and the angels to work in other people's lives. And I'll be talking about that in my next video on how do we intercede for others and what are the benefits for interceding for others. Paul gives us this powerful advice on how we can have a closer walk with God through prayer. It is profound, it's short, and is only 3 words. And you can find this in 1 Thessalonians 5:17. The Bible says, pray without ceasing. What? Well, this is the King James Version, but what does it mean to pray without ceasing? Does that mean that I'm on my knees all during the day and I'm calling out to God, I'm vocally talking to him all during the day and night? Well, if that's the case, it would interrupt our other parts of our worship services and our own personal, private, devotional life. It also interrupt our relationships, and it also would interrupt our work life. So what does it mean? Well, I looked up that word without ceasing. I mean, the phrase without ceasing in the Strong's Concordance. It translates as uninterrupted. So what it's saying is pray uninterrupted. In other words, if you're praying and getting interrupted, that means you're stopping prayer. So praying uninterrupted means you are praying continually. You're praying always. So how do we do that? Well, the mind has the ability to, when you're talking to someone else that you're or reading, that your thoughts wander on other subjects. So if that's the case, and I know that's happened to me, that when you are talking to someone, your mind can be talking to God, helping you to give you words to say. So I wanted to read a story in the Bible to help us to understand what does it mean to pray without ceasing. But before I do that, I wanted to give a little background of the story. So the children of Israel, there were estimated to be 1 to 3 million of them in Egypt. They had been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. They were in bondage, in slavery. Their spirits were broken. They were crying out to God for help and for deliverance. And God delivered them out of Egypt to a promised land. He had promised them this land. And so while they were going out in the wilderness, there was this group of people called the Amalekites, and they were coming up on the tail end of these people and harassing them and killing them. So what were they going to do? If they continued to just allow them to do this, then they were going to kill more and more people. So they decided to go to war. But these people that they were harassing and killing were discouraged and tired, and they were weary, they were weak. So anyway, so this is kind of the background of the story. So let's look at Exodus 17, verses 8 to 13. And I'm going to start out with verse 8. And it says here, when the Israelites were at Rephidim, they were attacked by the Amalekites. So Moses told Joshua, have some men ready to attack the Amalekites tomorrow. I will stand on a hilltop holding this walking stick that has the power of God. So is there anything in the Bible that helps us to understand what does it mean to be lifting up your hands? I mean, he was actually had a walking stick that represented the power of God in his right hand, but he was lifting up his hands. Is there anything in the Bible that that will help us understand what this means. We ask the question and let the Bible answer that question. So Psalms 141 verse 2, it says here, let my prayer be set forth before thee as incense, and the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice. Beautiful parallelism. The last part of the verse helps to enlarge and expand your understanding of the first part of the verse. That's what parallelism is. So prayer is to incense as lifting up your hands is to sacrifice. So understanding parallelism, prayer is equal to lifting up your hands as incense is equal to evening sacrifice. So what does it mean, the incense as evening sacrifice? Well, in the Old Testament, it was kind of like a church type setting where God's presence was there. They call it the sanctuary. In the most holy place, they had the mercy seat where God's presence was there. And in the holy place, right before going into the most holy place, there was an altar of incense. And it was burning continually day and night. And the smoke and the aroma was going up over into the most holy place, surrounding the mercy seat. That represented the prayers of the people. And those prayers were going on day and night. Isn't that powerful? So let's go on. In verse 10, Joshua led the attack as Moses had commanded, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur stood on the hilltop. The Israelites outfought the Amalekites as long as Moses held up his arms, but they started losing whenever he had to lower them. You can see the intensity of this battle. As long as Moses had his arms lifted up, the Israelites were routing the Amalekites. But after a while, his arms got tired, and the Amalekites started routing the Israelites. Now, one thing I learned here is that the children of Israel just didn't sit by the sidelines and watch Moses lifting up his arms and see God kill the Amalekites, but they got involved. They didn't know how to fight. They were in bondage and slavery, but they made themselves available for God to answer that prayer in a miraculous way. So going on in verse 12, finally Moses was so tired that Aaron and Hur got a rock for him to sit on. Then they stood beside him and supported his arms in the same position until sunset. That's how Joshua defeated the Amalekites. So as long as Moses was holding up his arms, that represented relying upon divine power through prayer. But when his arms went down to his side, that represents not being in prayer and relying upon human effort. So think about that. Spiritually, as long as we're in prayer, we're victorious over the trials and temptations. We won't murmur and complain, and because we're asking God to help us through all that. But when we take our thoughts off of God and in talking to Him and rely upon our own human effort, then we're going to start murmuring and complaining and getting frustrated and getting angry. So how long does it take? How long can you hold up your arms without your arms getting tired and falling to your side? Well, I just did it for a few minutes and my arms started to get sore. So Moses was also holding up a walking stick, like a rod. And so how long do you think Moses was able to hold up his arms? Well, I don't think it was very long. Maybe an hour or less. So think about this. What does it mean to pray without ceasing? It means to be in an attitude of prayerfulness all during the day. That doesn't mean we could talk to Him every second of the day, but I believe that it means to be, again, in an attitude of prayerfulness at least hourly, that we're talking to Him all during the day, hourly, so that when ambushes come up of trials and temptations and things that will frustrate and irritate us, that we're talking to Him. We're connected to divine power. And instead of falling into sin and getting angry and frustrated and impatient, that He's going to help us through that, and He's going to replace those things with peace and joy and happiness. Isn't that powerful? So remember, the battle is not ours, but God's. 2 Chronicles 20:15. Wow. Well, thanks for joining me today. And please check out our other videos on prayer and Bible study. Subscribe to our YouTube video, and check that notification button so that when a new video comes, you will be able to be notified. And we will continue to learn how we can have a close relationship with God. Thank you.